Ragtime is the original American music. Popular from around 1897 to 1917, ragtime swept the nation and revolutionized popular music of the time. It remained popular until jazz took over after the First World War. In this video, we will talk about what ragtime is, where it came from, and who played it. Ragtime is an instrumental work, usually for piano, that takes a march bass and adds a layer of syncopated melody over the top. The lower voices in the left hand of the pianist is an even time, either 2/4 or 4/4, with accents on the major beats. The right hand has a syncopated line, so the accents are not on the beat but in between the beats, considered ragged, where the name of the style comes from. The form followed the plan of many marches: a primary section A, that is repeated, a secondary section B, which is repeated, a return to the A section, then a trio, which includes a C section that is repeated, then a closing section D that is repeated. Each section is 16 bars long and has original musical material. One of the most famous rags is the Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. Published in 1899, it was the first piece of music that sold over 1 million copies. Let's listen to it now. Focus on the distinction between the lower straight rhythm and the syncopated rhythm on top. Watch the hands in their two distinct motions, left on the beat and the right in between the beat. Ragtime doesn't have one origin point. It is derived from the dance music of the time and is very close to a cakewalk. A cakewalk is a modified two-step, evolved from the popular marches of the time. It is an adaptation of the promenade or the grand march. The Washington Post March by John Philip Sousa was a popular connection between the two-step and the cakewalk, so much so that the two-step was called the Washington Post. It had its origins in get-togethers of black and slave peoples on plantations in the South. Ragtime also has similarities to buck dances and breakdowns, dances primarily seen in black communities. The ragged rhythm, or syncopation, is the biggest transformation in ragtime. This idea of syncopation didn't appear overnight, but was in the folk music of black people, in folk rags and songs. This was disseminated to white culture through minstrel shows, where white people would appropriate the music and dances of black people, sharing them with a white audience. It was in the same venue that the first rags, or ragged tunes, were heard by white culture. The first instrumental work of ragtime, the Mississippi Rag, was published by a white composer, William Henry Crell, in 1897. Ragtime was the first time that black composers could represent their own work in a broader culture in the United States, and was the first time that black culture widely influenced white culture. The biggest composer of ragtime music for piano was Scott Joplin. We have already heard his most popular rag, the Maple Leaf Rag, that made him a household name. The success of the Maple Leaf Rag made it a seminal work for other ragtime composers, and it is now considered the archetypal rag for piano. It was recorded many times, including by the United States Marine Band in 1906, the first known surviving recording. Joplin was born in Texarkana, Texas in 1868. He traveled the U.S. South as a musician before settling in Sedalia, Missouri. It was there he played his compositions in clubs and bars before beginning to publish in 1895. After a number of failed attempts to find a publisher, Joplin signed with a white man, John Stillwell Stark, a publisher of ragtime music. Joplin's publisher made the decision to market his compositions as the classical music of America and project them as the original artwork of the country, or what we could offer the world. The European tour of John Philip Sousa's band took ragtime to the Paris Exposition of 1900, where it inspired a number of European classical composers. Debussy used ragtime rhythms in his work Golliwogg's Cakewalk in his suite The Children's Corner. Another composer that took interest in ragtime was Antonin Dvorak. Eric Satie, Arthur Honegger, and Darius Milhaud, members of the Group of Six, a network of composers in Paris, never made any secret about their sympathy for ragtime, which is sometimes evident in their works. Igor Stravinsky wrote a solo piano work called Piano Rag Music in 1919, and also included a rag in his 1918 theater piece L'Histoire du Soldat. Ragtime faded from the consciousness of American culture around 1917 due to the popularity of jazz after the First World War. It fell out of favor as high art and was relegated to piano players in bars and brothels, where the genre would be stereotyped as music for sin. Another style of ragtime, novelty piano, was in vogue around the same time, using technology of the piano roll to be able to promote works with more complexity that not many people could play. This again was stereotyped as the mad piano player and fell out of fashion. The biggest revival of ragtime, and the reason you hear it today, was in the 1970s. Pianist Joshua Rifkin released an album of Scott Joplin's music called Scott Joplin Piano Rags on None Such Records, which was nominated for a Grammy Award in Best Classical Performance Instrumental Soloists Without an Orchestra category in 1971. This record reintroduced ragtime to the general public as serious music instead of a nostalgic stereotype. At the same time, the New York Public Library released a 2-volume set of the collected works of Scott Joplin, which boosted the composer's popularity with classical musicians and brought about stagings of Joplin's extant opera Tremochia. In 1973, the motion picture The Sting, featuring a Marvin Hamlish soundtrack of Joplin tunes edited by Gunther Schuller, brought ragtime to a wider audience. Hamlish's rendering of Joplin's 1902 rag The Entertainer won an Academy Award and was an American Top 40 hit in 1974, reaching number 3 on May 18th. Ragtime is the original American music. Before jazz hit the scene, the United States was known for its ragtime. It had complicated past in the racist culture of the United States in the late 1800s, but it became a way for black artists to make a big contribution to the overall culture. This video is indebted to the book The Art of Ragtime, The Form and Meaning of an Original Black American Art by William J. Schaefer, Johannes Riedel, Michael Poland, and Richard Thompson. I was able to get my hands on a copy through the lending program from the Internet Archive. If you have any interest in ragtime, I suggest you go to the Internet Archive and look it up. The whole book is available to check out. I had a great time with this video about ragtime. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Subscribe to my channel for more videos about music. You can also support the creation of these videos on Patreon, which I've linked in the description box below. You can find my bibliography for this video on my website, dominiqueroyam.com. I'd love to continue the conversation about ragtime with you on social media. You can find me as Dominique Royam on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks so much, and see you in my next video. Published in 1980. No, that is wrong.
From one of the most famous rags?
Hold on, we need to look up that date because I put it as 1988 and that is wrong.
That was her.
Smile for the camera. He traveled. Shh. Shh. See you in my next video.
You want to do that last line again?
Yes. We were done.